Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's geography lesson. My name is Nomthandazo Malembe. This lesson is brought to you by the Northern Cape Department of Education in collaboration with Phakama Research and Development. So in today's topic, we're going to focus on paper 2 revision under question 1. Before we start with our revision, we just want us to go through the topics as well as the weightings for your question paper. The marks allocation is 150 and your duration is 3 hours. In your question paper, you will have your section A as well as your section B. Your section A, it has 2 questions. Question 1 is a settlement geography with 60 marks, and question 2 is your economic geography with 60 marks. Then you move to section B. Section B is your map work with 30 marks. So our focus today is on question 1, which is your settlement geography. Remember, it is a rural settlement as well as your urban settlement. So in your 60 marks, the breakdown, you will have your short objective questions worth of 15 marks. And then after that, you will have 3 figures, your figure 1.3, 1.4, and 1.5. which are 15 marks each. And then along those 3 figures, you will have 1 figure where you will be answering a paragraph question. Then we're going to begin with our short objective questions. It can be a multiple choice, or you can have it as a column A and column B, or you can be given a statement, then you need to choose the words from the bracket. So we're going to start with our first question, which is figure 1.1. It's question 1.1.1. The main commercial zone of an urban area is, so you need to choose there between A up until D. You have your central business district, you have your transition zone, your industrial zone, as well as your outlying business district. So when we are answering this question, you need to underline the keywords and what the question is asking. So for instance, this one, the main commercial zone. So our keyword is the main commercial zone. And then after that, it's in the urban area. So you need to choose where is this main commercial zone in the urban area so that you get the correct answer. Then secondly, once we have highlighted your keywords as well as what the question is asking, you need to eliminate the questions that are obvious that they are wrong. So I'm going to give you 1 minute per question because it's only one question. So we're going to display one question at a time, and then we do the correction. Then we move to the next question. So your 1 minute starts now. With the hope that we are all done, we're going to move to the correction. So we're looking there, our main commercial zone. Remember, the commercial zone is the place of business. So therefore, the option A was correct because we are looking at the central business district, which is CBD. Then we move to our question 1.1.2. You're going to do the same. You are asked about the land use zone. So you need to identify the name of the land use zone is characterized by most pollution. So this is your keyword as well as what is the question asking for. That land use zone that is characterized or that is known by the most pollution. So you have your option A again up until option D. So I'm going to give you that 1 minute so that we move to the correction. Then we go to figure 1.1.3. So your 1 minute starts now. Looking there, we're looking at the land use zone where it is characterized by mostly pollution. We are saying it's the industrial. Remember, in the industrial, there is a lot of processing that is being done. So therefore, those are the industries or those are the land use zone whereby they pollute more. Then we're looking at your 1.1.3 is the land use zone again that is unattractive. So the land use zone that is unattractive but with a high land value. It is unattractive but with a high land value. So again, that 1 minute, and then after 1 minute, we will be able to proceed to the corrections. Right? Remember, I said you need to start by eliminating the ones that are wrong so that you can be left with 2 or just 1 that will make your answer to be correct. So looking at the land use zone that is unattractive but with a high land value. So looking at the central business district, which is the CBD. Remember the CBD, it has the tallest buildings, but even though it is congested, but the high land value also. So we are looking the one that is unattractive. Then you're looking at option C. Option C, it says industrial. So obviously the industrial is in the outskirts because of the pollution and they require a large space. So therefore it can never be unattractive. Then we're looking also at D, it says residential. Remember, residential, it can never be unattractive, but we can have the residential with a high land value. So now, what's our option that is left? It's B, which is the transition. Remember the transition, you think of the zone of decay. Remember, those are the buildings that are located closer or into the CBD. They are unattractive because they have been abandoned, but those ones who are using it, the land value is still high. So our option was B. Then we're looking at your question 1.1.4. The land value in this land use zone is the cheapest. So amongst the 4 options, which one is the cheapest? Then you're going to have that 1 minute so that you can be able to choose. And then after 1 minute, we do the correction. Right, I believe we are done. So again, we were looking at the land use value that is the cheapest. So we have our option C, which is your rural urban fringe. Remember, your rural urban fringe is in the outskirts between the rural as well as the urban, and the land there is cheap, and we said the much land is available. So therefore, remember, most of the industries such as your airports as well as your golf course, they prefer to be in the rural urban fringe. Then we move to question 1.1.5, the land use zone that has the highest building density. So again, the key there is the highest building density. Among the options, you choose there for 1 minute, and then after 1 minute, we will be able to proceed to the corrections. I believe we are done. Remember, we were looking at the land use zone with the highest building density. So we are looking at your central business district. Remember, at the CBD, it's where you will have your tall buildings or the one that we called a skyscrapers. Then your question 1.1.6, a commercial zone situated in the suburbs. So again, the commercial zone, where is it located in the suburbs? It is known as what? So 1 minute again, and then after 1 minute, we will proceed to the correction. We're looking there, that commercial zone that is situated in the suburbs, we call it the outlying business district. Remember the OBD again versus the CBD. The CBD is in the city center, and then your OBD, which is your outlying business district, is in the suburbs. Remember, sometimes they can ask you what are the advantages of the businesses operating or decentralized into the OBD. Remember, they are next to the residential, which means they will have a lot of customers as compared to the CBD. Then our question 1.1.7, the land use zone where most people live. Again, is the land use, but now where most people live. So you have your option A, B, C, and D. So again, 1 minute, and then after 1 minute, we will be able to do the correction. So this one, it was very, very simple. We're looking at the land use zone where most people live. We call the areas that we live in the residential zone, which is your option D. So you're moving to your question 1.1.8. The airports are usually located in this land use zone. I think I've made an example in our previous question, so I believe also it will be a simple one. So your 1 minute again start now. Right, with the hope that we are all done. So the airports are usually located in this land use zone. We call it a rural urban bridge. So by now, I hope at least you have your 7 or the total of 8 marks, because these are one-word questions. It will be allocated 1 mark. Right, we now move to your figure 1.2. Your figure 1.2 is another short objective questions. So this time you are given a column A and column B. So these are the definition in column A. What you need to do, read the definition and then you match it with the geographical term in column B. You've got 7 questions, which means I'm going to give you 7 minutes, and then after 7 minutes, we will be able to do the correction. So remember, these are the definition in column A, so read the definition carefully, then you choose the term in column B. Right, my learners, I hope we are all done. So let us look at our first question, which was 1.2.1. A settlement found in an area where water is scarce. So we are looking at that settlement and there is a shortage of water. So remember, we said the option there is H, your wet point settlement. Remember, it's vice versa with the dry point as well as the wet point. So I'm going to explain once more once we reach that question for the dry point. Then your 1.2.2 unifunctional settlement. Remember, unifunctional settlement, it means that settlement is only focusing on one function. So we've got the settlement G, which is your rural settlement. Remember, they are only focusing on the primary activities. Then your 1.2.3, a settlement and buildings that are located far apart from each other. So here we are looking at F as a pattern. So it's a dispersed because we're talking about the settlement or the buildings that are located far from each other. Then your 1.2.4, the actual ground that a settlement occupies. The actual ground, that was the key. So remember, in order for the settlement to be built, we need a site. So hence the actual ground. So the answer there is B, which is a site. Then your 1.2.5, a settlement that are closer to each other. So we call them C, which is your nucleated. So again, let us go back to question 1.2.3 and question 1.2.5. Remember, we have the two settlement patterns, which is your dispersed as well as your nucleated. So looking there at 1.2.3, the settlement and the buildings are located far from each other. So as they are located far from each other, mostly you will get that pattern at the rural areas because of the building style they use. Then looking at your 1.2.5, the settlement that are located closer to each other. So obviously that pattern, you will get it in the urban settlement. Then your 1.2.6, multifunctional settlement. So again, multifunctional settlement is A, which is your urban settlement. Remember, they are focusing on more than one function, which is the secondary as well as the tertiary. Then your 1.2.7, the relationship between a settlement and its surrounding environment. Remember, we said it's the E, which is the situation, the things that you identify in that area before you choose to buy a site. So again, let us go back to question 1.2.1. A settlement that is found in an area where water is scarce. Remember, in that settlement where water is scarce, they will have a water source, maybe a dam or a wind pump. So the people or in that area, they will choose themselves to build their houses next to that water source so that they can be able to get water. Then sometimes you will have your dry point settlement. Remember your dry point settlement, in that area, there is a river, but now the people are the ones who choose to build away from the river so that they can avoid being flooded. Remember these two concepts, your dry point settlement and your wet point settlement, you can get them for 7 marks sometimes. So you really need to know the difference between the two. Then we're now getting to our long questions. Remember, we said figure 1.1 and 1.2. They are your short objective questions, which means the 1 mark question. So after figure 1.3, figure 1.4, and figure 1.5, it's where you're going to get those long questions, your 2 times 2, your 3 times 2, your paragraph question, even though paragraph question is only 1. So in your figure 1.3, it's based on the diagram. In our diagram, we have the graph that is representing a rural population, and then the population number as well as the years. Then again, we have the infographic. Infographic, we've got the ghost town, and then all services cancelled. A village shop close down sale. So these are the things the examiner is giving you so that you can be able to use them in the question. So hence it is important to go through the diagram, and then you go through the questions, and then again you come back to the diagram when you are aware what are the questions. Then again, we are still in our infographic, the decline in traditional rural employment, reduce wealth and demand for the rural service, your population decline, your reduced rate of natural increase, and then we're looking at the deterioration in age, few employment opportunities, as well as immigration. So these are the clues that the examiner is trying to give. So let us look at the questions. In our questions, we've got 4 questions, including the paragraph question. So your 1.3.1, because the diagram is based on the rural depopulation, so obviously the first question you will have to define. So the first one, you define the term rural depopulation. Again, you must understand that all the definitions are 2 marks. Then your 1.3.2, you give evidence from the population graph that rural depopulation is a reality in South Africa. So I'm going to highlight your rural depopulation as you need to define it based on our diagram. And then the second question is from the population graph. Again, when we are looking at the diagram, you know where to get this answer. Then your 1.3.3, you describe the impact of rural depopulation. So we are looking at the impact of this rural depopulation on the economy of the rural areas. So by now you should realize that if you don't have the clue of what the rural depopulation is, following questions you won't be able to answer, because you need to describe the impact of the rural depopulation on the economy. Again, they did not say how many responses you need to give, but looking at the mark allocation, which is 2 times 2, meaning you need to give 2 responses. Then your 1.3.4, it's a paragraph question. You make a suggestion to the local government on how to reduce the trend of rural depopulation. Again, it also comes to the first question. Did you understand what is rural depopulation is? So now you need to give the suggestion to the local government on how they're going to reduce the trend of rural depopulation, and you explain the impact that will have on the economy as it indicated in the infographic. So now that we have seen the questions, I'm going to go back to the diagram so you can look at that graph, so that you can also look at that infographic. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to go through the diagram on your own, and then after 5 minutes, we will proceed to the questions. When we are doing your questions, because you have a paragraph question, I'm going to give you 12 minutes. So your 5 minutes to go through the diagram start now. I believe we all done. So displaying our questions, remember I said I'm going to give you 12 minutes so that you can be able to answer these 4 questions, because there is a paragraph question also. So after 12 minutes, we will be able to proceed to discussing the answers. Again, don't forget to write your answers down so that it can be easier when you are comparing the corrections. You can see where you went wrong and where you got it correct. Hoping that we are all done. So let us go through the correction. Our first question, you were supposed to define what is rural depopulation. Hence, our diagram is based on the rural depopulation. So you need to understand that the decline or the decrease in the number of people who are living in the rural areas, again, you must be careful of the living you are using. So you cannot use the one where people are moving out. So we are talking about the people who are staying in the rural areas. So for 2 months. Then your second question, you are supposed to give the evidence from the population graph that rural depopulation is a reality, which means it is happening in South Africa. So you are looking there, the graph, it is showing a decline in the population. From 2017, it was 19,480, and then to 2020, it was now 19,320. So you can see there is a decline, meaning there is a lot of people who are living there, the rural areas. Then we proceed to our question 1.3.3. Our question 1.3.3, you were supposed to describe the impact of rural depopulation on the economy of rural areas. Remember, when we're talking about the economy, it's something that has to do with the services, it's something that has to do with the income. So If there are few people who are left in the rural areas, which means some of the services, they will be closing down. So what services are we talking about? We're talking about schools. There will be a lack of enrollment in those schools. We're talking about the clinics. So they will be forced to close. So remember, as they are closing down, it means there are people who will be losing their jobs. Remember, we are looking at the impact of the economy. So if there are people who are losing their jobs, it means now those people will not be able to buy. Those people will not be contributing towards the tax, which means the economy of that area will be deteriorating. Then looking at the shops that will be closing down, again, the business owners of those shops will be losing in terms of the income, and also the employees will be losing. And then we're looking there at the town that will become a ghost town. Remember, we have talked about the ghost town when we're still learning that when people are moving out and leaving the area empty or vacant, it means now that town or that area will become a ghost because there is no one who is staying there. And looking at the few jobs that will be available, which means there will be less income. Then in our paragraph question, you are supposed to give suggestions on how to reduce this trend. So there, people, they move out because they want a better opportunities. They're looking for the better infrastructure. They are looking for the employment. So therefore, it is best advised that the municipality or the government should be able to take care of the rural areas so that they cannot move out. So there we're talking about decentralization of the industries. Remember, if they decentralize the industry, they are taking the very same industries that are found in the urban area and they develop the rural areas so that it can be attractive and people will be able to stay in those areas. So let us look at possible answers. Restore the old buildings. Remember, if the buildings are renewed, it means it will be attractive also so that people will not leave the area. We've already mentioned the decentralization, what we are talking about. And also, if we move the industries, remember, even those industries, the owners of the industries, because they will be decentralizing, government can give them the incentives, which means they will also benefit. Then we're looking at our figure 1.4. Figure 1.4, it's based on the infographic. So you're going to read this extract on your own. I will give you 5 minutes to go through the infographic, and then after 5 minutes we will then look at the questions, and then again we go back to the infographic so that you can highlight those answers. So your 5 minutes will start now. With the hope that we are all done. So let us look at our questions. So the infographic, it's based on urbanization. So therefore, again, your first question will be to define the term urbanization. Remember, all the definitions are worth 2 marks. Then second question, you give one factor from the case study which indicates why people prefer to live in urban areas. So now that you make notes on what are we going to check on the infographic, we need one factor that indicates why people prefer to live in the urban areas. And then we're looking at the question 3, which is according to the case study, again, rapid urbanization degrades environmental and health conditions. So you are given 2 things there, environmental and health conditions. Then you describe how rapid urbanization results in the degradation of the environmental and the health conditions. 2 times 2, which means you're going to give one answer on environmental, and one answer on the health conditions. Then your question 1.4.4, you explain why the case study refers to Gauteng as the province with the biggest and the fastest growing population in South Africa. So again, you refer to the case study. So by now, you should note all the questions that you need to refer to the case study. Then we have your question 1.4.5. Question 1.4.5, you evaluate the effect of urbanization on provision of services in Gauteng. So 3 times 2, meaning you need to give 3 responses. So you have seen all the questions. Let us go back to the infographic or the extract. So now you are reading it again with the understanding on what questions are based on this extract so that you can highlight the answers. So I'm going to give you another 5 minutes, and then after 5 minutes, we will proceed to the questions. So let us go through answering figure 1.4. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes to work on these 4 questions, and then after 10 minutes, we're gonna do a 1.4.5. Right? We are moving to figure 1.5. For your figure 1.5, I'm just going to give you 4 minutes. So after 4 minutes, we will then be able to do the corrections. The first question, you are supposed to define the term urbanization. Remember, urbanization, we're talking about the increase in the percentage or the increase in people who are living in the urban areas. Remember, as they leave the rural area, they are coming to the urban areas, which means each and every year, the population in urban area, they increase. Then we're looking at your figure 1.4.2, whereby you are supposed to give one factor from the case study. So there, many opportunities for work and leisure, you find it in the case study, or you went with the improved health, or you went with the improved education, and also the economic activity, and then the services which are concentrated in a small area. Then your 1.4.3, you were supposed to answer 2 things, the environment as well as the health conditions. So we're going to start with the environment. So it's either based on the environment, because of the urbanization, there will be so many people who will be doing different activities. So therefore, the level of pollution will be high. So remember, pollution, it affects in terms of the environment. And also, we are looking at the exhaustion of the natural resources. Remember, these people, they will be cutting trees, which is deforestation, to build their houses and so forth. So the natural resources will be overused. Then we're moving to the health side. In terms of the health conditions, as there is a pollution, which means the people's health will be in danger. And we're looking at the high population density that will result in a stress-related as well as the heart conditions and the anxiety because of so many people. And also, with the high population, in terms of the diseases, they spread very fast because of there is no space in between. Then we're looking at your 1.4.4, whereby you are supposed to explain why Gauteng is the biggest and the fastest growing in terms of population. Remember, Gauteng is the central, so it means there is an easy access between provinces as well as other countries. And also, Gauteng is known as the province with a high concentrated industries. So therefore, people are coming there in search for jobs. And also, Gauteng is a well-developed in terms of the infrastructure amongst the provinces in South Africa. Then we're looking at our question 1.4.5, whereby you were supposed to evaluate now the urbanization in terms of the provision of services. Remember, we are saying this province is the one that is highly populated. So what impact does it have on the provision of services? So number one, we're looking there at more people will reduce the safety as well as the readily available resources in terms of water. We're looking there in terms of the electricity also, there will be a high demand, so that will lead into the load shedding because there are so many people in the area, so they will end up overusing. Remember, electricity is made from the naturals, which is the coal, so it's unlikely they can produce as much as they can. Then we're looking at also one other possible answers, the high electricity, which will strain the delivery. We've already mentioned that. Then also we're looking at in terms of the medicals. If there are so many people in that area, which means there will be so many people who will be needing the medication, remember, which means the government or the municipality in Gauteng, they will end up spending more. Then we're looking at your figure 1.5. Figure 1.5 is based on the informal settlement. So there you are given the map of South Africa with the percentage or the degree of poverty in South Africa per province. So which means it is important to know your map of South Africa so that you can be able to tell which province we're talking about. Then we're looking at the picture. The picture says it all, informal settlement. So by now, there's supposed to be some things or some features that we are marking that indeed this is an informal settlement. Then again, you are given an infographic. So now that we have gone through the diagram, let us see what are the questions. So in your questions, you've got 1.5.1a, and then 1.5.2 and 1.5.3. Then we're going to proceed to the next question. So your A, you need to identify the province in the infographic with the highest poverty in South Africa. And also at B, you need to account for the highest poverty rate in that province you have identified. So which means if you don't know the province in South Africa, you will have the problem. Then your 1.5.2, you give two examples which indicate that the people in the photo image of the infographic are living in poverty. So now you can see your question 1 is supposed to go back to the diagram, your B, as well as your 1.5.2. Then you explain how unemployment contributes to the poverty in urban areas, another 2 times 2. Then your last question will be figure 1.5.4, where you need to suggest ways in which the local government is responsible for the area in the image above can decrease the poverty. What role can the government play to decrease the poverty? So again, I'm going to go back to the diagram so that you can be able to identify that province, and you look at the picture as well as the infographic now that we have seen what the questions are. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes for you to look at the diagram, and then after 5 minutes, we will be able to proceed to the questions. Then you now can be able to answer the questions. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to answer these 3 questions, and then after 10 minutes, we will be able to answer your 1.5.4. Then we do the corrections. right? You now doing the question 1.5.4, whereby you need to give the ways in which the government can reduce the poverty in that area. So 3 times 2, which means you need 3 responses. So I'm going to give you 4 minutes to work on this question, and then after 4 minutes, we'll then proceed to the corrections. Right? Looking there in identifying the province, you will see that Gauteng had the 44.1%. So therefore, it was the one with the highest poverty. Even though we are saying all the industries are mostly based in Gauteng, so therefore a lot of people are coming in. So that makes the area to have a shortage number of opportunities in terms of the population. Then in accounting for the highest poverty rate in the province, as I was saying, there are so many people who are migrating into the province. So therefore, the number of jobs in that area will be less than the number of people. And also we're looking at the people who are coming there without any qualification or without any skills, even if the job opportunities were there, because of the lack of skills as well as the lack of education, they won't be able to be employed. Then we're looking at your 1.5.2, whereby you're supposed to give the 2 examples which indicate that the people in the photo are living in poverty. You're looking there at the poor building infrastructure. You can see that they are very decayed, or they are very old. So therefore, obviously, if you're rich, you cannot live in that estate. And also you're looking at the children in the street. They are not at school. So therefore, there is a lack of education in that area. And also we're looking at the people who are doing tasks for themselves. You've seen there in the picture, they are trying to fix their ground. So therefore, which means they are not able to hire people or to get the machines to do the work for them. And then we're looking at the poor infrastructure. Also, it's one of the examples. Then looking at our question 1.5.3, whereby you're supposed to explain why unemployment contributes to poverty. Remember, if you are not employed, it means you cannot be able to buy. So in terms of the food, so obviously the people without income cannot be able to pay the bonds. They cannot be able to rent the places. So therefore, they will settle in the informal settlement, which means the poverty will increase. And then we're looking at, for those people also who are unemployed, mostly they will be relying on government for the social grants, which means even the government will have a strain because they will have to cater for a lot of people. Then we're looking at your question 1.5.3, also some of the examples. There will be less people who will be paying tax if there are more people who are not working, which means, again, those few people who are working, they will be the one who will be paying expensive taxes so that government can be able to provide for all these social grants. Then we're looking at your 1.5.4, you suggest ways in which the government is responsible for the area in the image above that can decrease poverty. So obviously those people, some of them, they don't have any skill. Some of them, they don't have qualifications. So in providing the skills for these people, and also in having some programs that they can be able to secure jobs. Then we're looking at, and also to have some sort of project so that those people, it's either they gain the skill so that they can be able to work on their own, or so that they can be employable. Then Also, the distribution of food as well as the food parcels to those people who are in the informal settlement. Remember, these are one of the ways that the government or the municipality in that area can do in order to reduce the poverty. Then also, we're looking at to supply the cheaper services like the electricity. It is expensive as well as the water. So if they can decrease also in those services, people will be able to save. And then we're looking at also the programs, we've already mentioned them, as well as the skills development, we've already mentioned them. So we're going to summarize what we have learned today. We have learned about the land use zone. We have looked into the rural depopulation. We have learned about the urbanization as well as the informal settlement. So the preview of our next lesson, we're going to do paper 2 revision. Question 2, remember your paper 2, question 2, it's your economic geography. So we have come to an end of our lesson today. Hopefully you have learned as much as possible, but most of all, I hope we have enjoyed the lesson. Thank you and stay tuned for the next one.